Hi, I am Freema Gottlieb. Welcome to the weekly Torah reading, Vaetchanan. Vaetchanan, and I entreated God emphatically, insistently at that time. The Ishbitzer asks why Moses mentions this episode when seemingly his prayer was turned down. What leader tells his followers about his failures? Wasn't it embarrassing? Moses has already been informed of God's immutable decree. He would not be permitted to complete his mission by bringing Israel home. Nevertheless, Moshe Rabbeinu felt encouraged to pray for the decree to be rescinded. But as this verse states, his request was rejected. Why bring it up again? The Talmud cites a story in 2 Kings when Hezekiah, king of Judah, is visited by the prophet Isaiah on his sickbed and told to set his affairs in order. A death sentence had been pronounced against him for this life and the next. And, the prophet adds, such a judgment is irrevocable. As soon as he heard this, the king, lying supine, leapt out of bed and told Isaiah to stop moralizing and get out. A religious tradition from an even higher spiritual authority, the royal line of his grandfather, King David, held that even in face of certain death, one should never stop praying for God's mercies, which can overturn every decree. Hezekiah then turned to face the wall, pointedly ignored Isaiah, and prayed. Hardly had Yeshayahu descended 3 steps from the royal bedchamber when God told him to get back right in and deliver a divine message. 15 more years. Moshe Rabbeinu, Hezekiah's predecessor, the pioneer of this prayer of Tachanunim, was seemingly received not such a positive response. Enough already. Pray to me no more about that, said God. Ramban tells us that God's response to Moses at that time was in fact positive. Moses offered 2 prayers. One, a personal request to enter the good land. The other expresses his concern that the people not become like lost sheep without a leader, to which God responded, "Command Joshua." What became of Moses' dearest request, we are left to wonder. A superficial understanding of this parasha's title may suggest that Moses, reflecting on his fate with irony, resorted to a pun. The root of the Hebrew word Vaetchanan is chen, or grace. It also means pure freedom or nothingness, chinam, nothing. 40 years previously, God had hardly liberated Israel from slavery and given them the Torah when the nation proceeded to worship the golden calf. While they were under sentence of death for this betrayal, their leader basked in God's favor, chen. He had a certain charm, as did Esther when she was queen, of whom it is told, because she asked for no favors before going into the king, she touched the hearts of all who saw her. Because she asked for nothing, she elicited divine favor. She had, in fact, elicited Ruach HaKodesh. The Talmud tells us there are 10 forms of prayer, but when all else fails, one's only recourse, like a beggar or a child, is not to rely on one's merits, even when considerable, but to fall back on God's infinite mercy. What appeals to the omnipotent above all is chen, composed of pure egolessness. In mid-career, Moses intervenes on the nation's behalf, ready to put his life on the line to save them from destruction. "Blot me out of your book, the Torah," says he. if God does not extend to the entire nation the same sympathy he feels for his favorite. To which God grudgingly replies, I will be gracious to whom I like, and love whom I want and desire. The tacit understanding is that this person is Moshe Rabbeinu, and Israel for his sake. Fast forward to the present parasha, and the situation seems entirely changed. Now that the nation and Joshua are moving on without him, does Moses resort to this form of prayer called Tachanunim serve as poignant recall of lost chen, influence? Rather should we take it, as that's what I think, as an indication of our great leader's other-centeredness. Vaetchanan. The verb is reflexive, and I wrapped myself in entreaties for divine mercy. For whom? The Shem Mishmoah says that this devotion contains such a powerful wave of warm emotion that it breaks down barriers of self and is directed towards others, loved ones, or even something beyond, as the Shekinah, God's presence. While he seems to ask for something for himself, Moses was actually receiving from God and demonstrating for the people a way to deepen their relationship with the Almighty throughout the ages. After the sin of the golden calf, when Israel was forgiven for Moses' sake, and he was offered the chance to make a personal request, he says, "Show me your ways." Even then, he was not asking for any intellectual pleasure for himself. What God modeled for the Jewish leader at that time was the 13 attributes of compassion, which he in turn enacted for the people for all time, so that they could receive atonement on fast days, during the Slichot prayers, and especially on Yom Kippur. By wrapping himself in this particular mode of prayer, Moses demonstrated its power. Why did he want to cross over into the good land in the first place? Was it simply to enjoy the fruits and physical beauty of the land? Classic commentary tells us that it was to fulfill certain mitzvot that could only be undertaken there. Mystical thinkers assert that by performing those commands, he would bring both the Holy Land and the nation to their full potential. The pull towards land and people transcended the personal. However, it was the people, not Moshe Rabbeinu, who are not ready for such consummation. That is why God replied, "Enough already," precisely because his favorite, by asking nothing for himself, was making it hard to resist. However, as the Ishbitzer says, whoever prays with such devotion is never turned away empty-handed. As a substitute for what he wanted, for one last time, Moses received and was privileged to demonstrate that casting oneself on the divine mercy creates unexpected openings for mercy to enter. A good thing to remember any time, but especially on Shabbos Nachamu, the Shabbos of Consolation, when in so brief a period we have passed from the destruction of both temples on Tisha B'Av to a time of favor, Shat Rachamim, Shabbat Shalom.